Russian word Toska is a word relating to a Chechen word that means anxiety. And the Russian word is also related to that definition. It means mental anguish in combination with boredom and sadness. It's often turned into yearning or anguish. And if you can't tell, Toska is a Proto-Slavic word, but in Russia, Toska has taken a more culturally significant meaning with how it reflects upon the mental state of the Russian people. Russia is, while not the oldest country, it's fairly new in comparison to many European countries. It does have a long history of existing with many of its institutions. And it's important to look at these institutions, how Russia formed, in order to see how Toska is seen by the Russian people. The first idea of Russia started in the Dark Ages after the fall of the Roman Empire, with the East Slavs.
Vladimir the Great, or Saint Vladimir, converted the Kievan Rus to Orthodox Christianity. This was not only important for the development of Eastern Orthodox Christianity, but also helped to unite the Rus.
At that point, you can't really see where Toska is coming into that, this sort of existential sadness. This was ended with the Mongol conquest.
The reign of Ivan the Terrible saw Moscow's expansion from a city in northern Russia into the successor of the Kievan Rus. This was achieved through reckless war and the destruction of the hated boyar class. This led to a very certain type of aristocrat rising to power, those who would be complacent in this kind of killing, and those who fear the Tsar. This gave the nobility a very specific culture around them, a culture that separated them from the lower classes. The nobles were encouraged to act bored and aloof as a means to display the control they had over their lives and the people around them. And the lower classes would try to emulate this by giving into the despair of their lives and remaining aloof in spite of that. They would act bored, but inside they would be depressed and repressed to the point of zealous complacency. These two systems, the systems of the upper class and the lower class, were referred to as spleen and Toska. Spleen deriving from the English word spleen, and Toska deriving from the Proto-Slavic word for anxiety. Toska was based off the concept of spleen, which itself was a borrowing from the terms of the English aristocracy. The Russians have always been at the fringe of European society, and have often sought to emulate the wealth and status of the Western Europeans. This led to the tendencies of spleen and Toska, which emphasized self-reliance for the Russian people, as greed was seen as something of the lower classes, not befitting an aristocrat. This was encouraged by many of the Russian tsars, who saw this as a means of maintaining their respectability among the elites of European society. This would also make the Russian serfs much more compliant than those in the rest of Europe, as they would see their toughness and compliance as a virtuous trait. Even still, there was envy and jealousy for the wealth that the Western European nations had gained through industrialization and colonial empire. Toska would remain as an idea of the peasants until the fall of the Russian Empire, but would gain new life with the rise of the Soviet Union. The Soviets exonerated this idea of Toska as the strength of the people and would use it as evidence of their hardships under Tsarist oppressors. This would prove detrimental, as while Toska attempts to project strength, it is inherently a mask for deeper worries. And after the fall of the Soviet Union, this mask would become more apparent. The Soviet Union represented the hopes of the Russian people, the hope to be strong and to progress. But as the Soviet Union began to stagnate, the Russian people would see all of those fall. In the modern day, Toska is a dull sadness that echoes the fall of the Russian dream. Toska comes from knowing that something has gone wrong, and that you could do nothing to stop it, complacent and dissatisfied.
He said his action was inevitable. After 6.5 years in power, Mikhail Gorbachev confirmed his resignation on television tonight.
Я покидаю свой пост с тревогой, но и с надеждой, с верой в вас, вашу мудрость и силу духа.